Well, this is an ongoing series that we have with Contabi Alliance as part of the Latino professionals that we see within the accounting industry. And we're very, very pleased to have Contabi, which is a great network of professional accountants that are from various different countries, collaborating together, building community, as well as using technology to be successful within their practices as they continue to venture on. And one of the keys to success is actually softwares and vendors that help us do our job much easier. So today I wanted to introduce myself, Joel Lacayo. I am a co-founder of Contabi, and I've been within the accounting industry for years. I just like to say years, nothing specific. And just working with amazing individuals on the professional sales side, but also amazing individuals on the professional accounting side. And we thought it'd be great to have an amazing session of all these professionals on key integral parts of our tools that we use as accountants to be successful, and the people behind the tool that help them and strive to be better at whatever they're using. One of those amazing professionals that I know personally is Martina Chavez. Martina, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to come on board with us in Contabi and learn more about you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that introduction. It's so nice to be here.
Great. So one of the things that I'd like to the audience to know, Martina, is a little bit about yourself. Well, tell us about your role, where you came from, and essentially who you're with.
Sure. Okay, so currently I am with Rippling, very cool product that I just joined the company about 6 months ago. Great product, HRIS and payroll and app management and device management. A lot going on. We, as a company, have been growing rapidly, and it's been super cool to be part of that growth. Joining the team around, like, I think employee number 250-ish or something like that. So that's my current role. I'm on the channel team, working with accountants directly. So building out that program and supporting accountants to better support themselves internally, but also, of course, support their clients with the Rippling product.
Rippling itself, like, what prompted you individually to come join the Rippling team? Were there, obviously, it's a good fit in terms of a role, but were there other factors that came into your decision making to come to Rippling?
Yeah, no, there definitely were. So prior to Rippling, I was at a company, Avalara, which is a sales tax automation software. And I was there for just over 6 years, which is, where we met originally through the Xero partnership. And that was really where I kind of cut my teeth in the world of tech. Prior to Avalara, I had worked for a startup company called iMarket Solutions, kind of learning the ropes of online marketing a little bit, and a little bit of sales, and a little bit of a jack of all trades role. So I was slowly moving my way into bigger company, bigger positions, and started really small. That was a team of like 3 when I started, and then it started to grow, and then transitioned my way into Avalara, which is a much larger company. And while I was at Avalara, Avalara went public, which was super cool to be part of. And so when Rippling presented itself to me, it was a really good time. I was ready for a transition, ready for a career change. I've been working remotely for about 4 years. Avalara is headquartered in Seattle, and really missed kind of that in-person team environment. And so it was perfect to make the shift to a company that was local to me, San Francisco based. Of course, right now we're all working remotely. So within a week, I was once again working from my home office, but it's been definitely a very different experience with all of us working remotely all at once. And again, when I was presented with this opportunity, a recruiter reached out to me, and I actually hadn't heard of Rippling yet. So I had a little bit of, I knew what a payroll software provider was. We used a competitor of ours at Avalara, so I kind of had that experience there, but I didn't really understand the ins and outs of an HRIS or kind of the app management, device management side of things. On the side, I also own a yoga studio. And so I have experience kind of on the operations side as a business owner. And so hearing about Rippling and just hearing about how it integrates everything all into one streamlined flow, I was like, whoa, this is just, it literally blew my mind, because, knowing all the things, all of the different tools that I'm literally, all the different tools that I use for my own personal business, which is very small. It's a very small outfit. I don't have employees. I have all contractors, but there's a similar kind of onboarding process, and you got to pay them, all that. So I was like, this is just brilliant. Having one employee record, how cool is that? You're streamlining all of these operational efforts that are mandatory. You can't bypass, and you have to stay in compliance. And there's so many regulations around compliance with payroll and compliance with benefits administration for insurance. And that's a lot to keep track of as a business owner. So again, I love technology, and I love this Rippling, specifically this product, just really got me excited. I was excited about the product, and then when I got to meet the team, I think it was 3 days later, I got to meet the team after having a conversation with a recruiter. I was just even more excited, because I think we all know, we have that experience of walking in, and that initial introduction to somebody, your first impression really means so much. And just that energy that every single person had about the work environment and about the product itself was contagious. And I left, after my first interview, I left on cloud nine. I was just like, whoa, I've never been so excited about a product or being part of a workforce like this.
That's awesome. I mean, a nice little segue into what we really want to get into, which is how Martina became the Martina that we know today. Which, by the way, I have to edit myself out in this. It's not Martina Chavez anymore. It's Martina
Chavez-Young. I have a hyphenated last name. I did not want to give up my Chavez name, though. Yes, but I did want to use my husband.
Absolutely. Congratulations on that. Yeah, and I think it just kind of denotes where your path has led up until this point. And I think it's safe to say that everybody's past actually holds true to who they are today. So everybody has an origin story. Are you familiar with the phrase origin story?
Yeah.
So everybody has this kind of origination that they've came to be, and all these different events that took place to get them to this place. So, implore me, take me back to young Martina, little baby Martina, little teenager Martina, and even young professional, young adult Martina. Talk about that, what your past is all about, who are your descendants, who are your family, what's the culture that you come from, and how that has been really a foundational point to who you are today.
Sure. Well, of course, there's so much, as all of us have a lifetime, life story to tell, but you're right. We are definitely shaped by our past and by our experiences. And I think oftentimes we're shaped by our hardest experiences in life, that's where when we can overcome something really challenging, we learn resilience and hopefully are able to grow from those experiences. So nobody has perfect lives, of course, and I'm no stranger to imperfection. I was born in Martinas, California. It's a slight part of my namesake. I was almost a Magdalena, if you can believe it. I know. I'm not a Magdalena, so I'm glad that my parents stuck with Martina. But actually, my first name is Gaia, which is also the namesake for my yoga studio. So I have a lot of names. Parents were hippies, what can I say? And I'm mixed heritage. So, my lineage is, my mom's side is Scottish ancestry, living in the Pacific Northwest area. And then on my dad's side, Latino. My grandma is from Colorado, and my grandfather, who I never met, is from New Mexico. Which of course, both of those states were formerly Mexico territory. So that's the two sides of the family. So, but born and raised in the Bay Area. So I grew up in Oakland, and so my mom's side of the family still lived in the Washington area, and my dad's side of the family still lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I didn't grow up with either extended family very close to me. It was always like this very small family unit, my sister and I with our parents. And our parents got divorced when I was 7. She was a little older than me, but so a lot of my life, there was the little stages of my life where I remember, just the innocence of being a kid and getting to dress myself. I mean, I was the queen of dress up when I was a kid, wearing tutus under my dress and just like having a blast. Anyways, took my dollies on walks a lot. And then as a child, 7 and on, my dad was really out of the picture. There was a family separation and I really didn't see him very much. So that also really shaped me. That was very, very hard on my family. And I think anyone who comes from a family of divorce knows that it's just hard. It's even when you get to see both parents regularly, and in my case, I didn't get to see my dad very often. And that carried with me through high school. High school was hard. I was struggling.
Isn't it always though? It's always hard.
Yeah, I mean, for me it was hard, and like academically, I was very lucky to. I went to a private high school, and I'm so thankful that I did. One of the most diverse private high schools there is in the nation, actually, St. Mary's High School in Berkeley. So that was a really, really wonderful experience for me. The student body was less than 500 students. So I was not getting lost in like the thousands, in the masses. And I've always done a little better in smaller environments. That's something I've definitely learned about myself over the years. But high school was hard for me because, as it is for many teenagers, but not having my dad around and my mom working all the time, she would put herself through nursing school after the divorce. And so I wasn't an athlete at the time. I didn't get myself involved in sports. I didn't really have any structure aside from going to school and going home. Like there wasn't anything outside of that. And so I partied a lot. I was a party girl in high school, and it was, we know what drugs and alcohol do to our brains. Like it's not helpful and in development in general. And yeah, I struggled with insecurity. I struggled with self-worth for sure, and those are all kind of reasons why people turn to substances. And oftentimes, there's some kind of other underlying trauma that's happening. And for me, that was definitely really apparent in my high school years. So I did get good grades. My senior year was my best year. I really excelled. And that was a year that I kind of like took control of my life. Like I actually made some clear-cut decisions. I decided to stop smoking weed. I stopped partying.
The decision.
It was a very good decision. Yeah. I mean, I literally felt stupid. It was one of those moments where I had like a light bulb. I was like, my brain isn't working. And I didn't like that, so I had to kind of get to that place where I was like done. And I'm so glad I did that at 17 and not at, 38. Right. I would not be where I am today. And so that was like, so I've had these moments where I've had to say like, I've had to actually course correct myself pretty hard, where I'm like, this is not the path I want to be going on. And then I'm like, course correct, get back on track. And I always appreciate those, like, the drawings, the meme drawings about like, with like the line with all the squiggling in it for a representation of success. Cause it's like what we think success looks like. And it's just like this linear, upward trend. It's like, not at all. That's totally not it. It's like squiggling all over the place and you're going backwards and sideways and, or staying still and just like kind of doing the same thing on repeat for a while. And then you figure it out. So that's definitely what my experience was. Just a lot of kind of like struggling through high school. And then college, I went to an all-women's college in Oakland, Mills College. Also really phenomenal experience. I studied ethnic studies. I decided to take coursework that was meaningful to me. I wasn't thinking about college as far as like, how am I gonna make money after I graduate? I really didn't look at it in that way. I thought, if I'm gonna spend money on coursework and I'm going to spend my time, I'm going to do ingest information that feels meaningful. And for me, that was ethnic studies. And it was a great degree for me to engage in. received an award for an outstanding senior thesis, which was awesome. I was able to write about my community and about the alcohol industry and everything I'd witnessed and experienced growing up with, the alcohol industry literally targeting young people in my community. And, and I mapped it out. I mean, it's something that I actually want to reread it and be like, what did I say? I remember all the research that went into it, but I'm curious how I wrote at that time. I'm sure that changed a lot. But yeah, so there's those stages, and I became an athlete in college. That was another pivotal moment. I started rowing in college, and I didn't even know what rowing was until I went to Mills, because I grew up in Oakland. There's no rowing in Oakland, not in East Oakland, not where I grew up. And I think this, I wish I had known. I wish I had been engaged in athletics at an earlier age. That's something that, as I think about having a family of my own, that's something that will be very, very important. But I didn't. I became an athlete at a later time, and so that's just where we are. And but that definitely was another one of those crossroad moments where I was able to kind of take my life in a new direction and learn some new skills about resilience and about commitment and dedication and and moving through literally the pain of moving through something hard and challenging, but then getting to the finish line in a very literal way. That was really powerful for me. And it led me to a whole lot more. I mean, I could talk for a long time about just all the different crossroads that I've been encountered with, but leading up to my professional career, at Avalara, I feel like Avalara really opened up this totally new world to me that I was actually kind of resistant to initially. When I when I graduated, I was
the corporate structure or
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I was I don't ever want to work for a corporation. I really was. I was very, and again, coming from an ethnic studies degree, just kind of understanding. Yeah, I was I don't want to work for the man. The work I want to do, I want it to feel meaningful. I always saw myself as maybe working in the nonprofit sector. I worked for chiropractors for a while. I considered going down that path for myself, becoming a chiropractor. I prioritized rowing over going to school for chiropractic. So I kind of, again, chose my own path there, and fitness kept being something that was really important to me. So, but the Avalara entered my life, and I needed to make that shift financially for myself.
How do you go from rowing, chiropractor, that industry to Avalara? Where did you get in connection with Avalara? So you're obviously in tech now, but how did you get into tech? How did you get your opportunity or your shot? Or was it just hey, we need somebody? What did it look like for you?
So I met a woman who was a patient at the chiropractic office the last chiropractic office that I worked for. She loved me. She was hard. She was like a hard ass. She was one of those people who came in and she was kind of pissed all the time. She was not an easy patient. But she just was time is money, let's get through this, right? And I worked with her in a great way, and she was she loved me. And I ended up leaving that job, and she one day came back to the office and was like, "Where's Martina?" And they said, "Oh, she's not here anymore." And she was like, "Can you give her my card? I want to offer her a job." And I was looking for a job, so it was good timing. And so she got me into a company, Dexter and Cheney, which is technology. It's a accounting software. They were acquired, but accounting software for heavy highway construction industry. And I got a role in their accounting department. I was doing AR and AP for a couple years. And then it was the same woman who referred me to this next role at iMarket Solutions. And it was this opportunity to work remotely, which I thought sounded super cool at the time. Work for a startup, just kind of have a little different flexible schedule. And I took that job as well, interviewed and got hired, and worked there for a few years. And then she was at Avalara, and she recruited me there too. So she recruited me.
Do I know this lady from Avalara?
You might. Her name's Robin Connor. She's not at Avalara any longer, but you might know her. She was kind of always behind the scenes. She wasn't in like the sales facing roles. She was on the marketing side primarily, but so yeah, she recruited me to Avalara, and it was a great time to join the company, kind of similar to Rippling as far as like numbers are concerned. Avalara was already almost a decade old, but they were at about 250-ish employees, and the same, not the same. Rippling is definitely like sets another bar, but there was still a lot of excitement about the product and an excitement about the growth, and just like, that energy was there, and it was super fun to join that. And then, we went public 4 years in. Yeah, I think it was 4 years in. And we had to keep that secret for 4 years because the CEO let us know, and it was very exciting to hear, but then it was like, okay, don't tell anybody for 4 years.
Horrible.
Yeah.
But
now I can
how did you start at Avalara? Was it like, what kind of role did you have to begin with? Was it like an entry level? Was it more mid? Was it easier because you already had somebody recommending you through? Or how did you feel about that in terms of that? Because sometimes when you come in, even as a referral, you still feel like you have to battle your way through things. Or was it easier fit for you to come in there like, no, she loves me and she's going to hire me? And because you weren't on the same teams, right?
No, we weren't on the same teams. And so the role that I originally applied for was in her department. She wouldn't have been the person I was reporting to, but she was just like, just join the team, like just get in the door, basically. Yep. She was looking out for me. And I mean, I really appreciate that. She knew this was an awesome opportunity. And for whatever reason, and this is so funny. Maybe other people have the same experience, but I still don't know why she chose me, to like, kind of like be like, okay, come to this company, come to like,
to essentially mentor you, like bring you
along the way. But it was very unofficial, and it was like, and it wasn't like we had that relationship once I was at the company. That wasn't really the relationship we had. So anyways, I have so much gratitude for kind of being handpicked in that way by this person who didn't know my story, just knew who I was in a professional environment. She knew that I handled business, and like, she was like, I like you. You handle business. Like, you know how to get shit done. You're not, beating around the bush. You respect my time. Like, I think those were just things that were, that she noticed and wanted to bring me on board with other companies. So I definitely feel like that's something that not everybody gets to experience in their lifetime, like have someone kind of hand select them in that way. And it is definitely something that I have intention and have done, like in, kind of pass that along because it's important.
Yeah, but I think it was more than just, I know you're being humble about it in terms of like being handpicked, but the reality is like, I think it's the work ethic that she noticed. And now being in tech for as many years as you've been in tech, I think you can see the type of people that do get hired within this industry or within these companies. It's not always like, the education that they're coming from, but it's the character, right? It's the type of individual. And you saw it when you came to Rippling and you first started with Rippling. The type of people that are around you aren't just going to be studious and book nerds or just like all about the knowledge base. It's about the type of person that they are. And I think that's what she identified in you. And she sounds like a lady that was also involved in numerous other like companies, right? So she understood the type of individual that needed to come and be part of those companies to continue to move it forward. Unlike a corporation where it's just like you're just stagnant, you're doing your role, you have like this little part to do, like you're that one little wheel in this massive company. Yeah, exactly. You're a small cog in a huge machine. I think that some people like yourself, that what I'm hearing also pivoting yourself from like high school and maybe some like decisions that you like observe and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't really going to benefit me. Focusing your intention on courses that you took or things that you did in the university or college setting, more towards Martina rather than like this construct that's out there. Mm-hmm. I think that was really what she appreciated about you and your diligence to get things done. Like you mentioned, it's an attribute. I think you should be celebrated for that because not everybody has that type of attribute. Some are just more of like, I'll do the job or I'll do the task. that's assigned to me. Others, what I'm hearing from yourself, are more like, I want to make sure that I make an impact in whatever I'm doing, because I'm spending the time, I'm using my energy towards something, and I want it to be reflective in a larger sense.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you framing it in that way, because I think this just goes back to like part of my personal growth, and it's something that I can reflect on now, without without shame. I think is I didn't know that back then. I was letting myself be led. Like I didn't really know what I wanted for myself. I didn't really know how to attain it for myself either. I knew I needed to make money. I knew I needed to, like, there was a survival aspect of it. Like I was in crazy amounts of debt after college, and and a lot of us come out of college with debt. Not everybody, but it's very, very hard to kind of find your way when, at least this was my experience. It can be hard to find your way when financial stress is like just heavy and sitting on top of you. And that's what I experienced for a long time, was just a lot of financial stress. And so I was making decisions based on how do I alleviate some of that financial stress. It was less about like, is this going to be fulfilling for Martina? And is this like my big dream in life? And I'm okay with that too. I'm okay with the fact that I made some decisions in order to become financially stable, which Avalara absolutely offered me through that journey. Not right away, because you asked, how did I come into the company? It's like I applied for one role, which was actually in the marketing side of things, and that was not open to me. But there was another role that was available through business development, and it was entry level, definitely entry level, and I got hired onto the business development team, and then I grew there, and I got to got to get to know what business development is in the first place, and be part of these business conversations and think strategically, and and learned about the channel, and learned about sales processes, and got to get my hands into product initiatives, and and network just a ton. Like met so many people in the industry through the accounts that I was managing, through the partner accounts that I was managing, and it was just like little by little, just kind of expanding what my relationships look like, but also my skill sets, learning new skill sets that I never, that I didn't even have the language for before I joined Avalara. There was all this corporate jargon that I was learning on the fly, and I was like, what does that mean? There's still funny jargony words that I'm kind of like, that's just silly. Like, we don't have to circle back. We can just like come back to this, right? But anyways, so yeah, it was, it's I think going back to the point about, I didn't necessarily see my value even as I was like being recruited into these jobs. I knew that I worked hard. I knew that I was smart. I knew that I'm very capable, but I didn't necessarily see that I was also valuable. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, totally.
That was definitely a learning through my time at Avalara. Yeah.
I think it's definitely knowing your worth as a professional comes in time. You learn it. It's especially if you are not in the sales aspect of things. Fortunate enough, I've been in sales and business for a long time. So I knew my worth immediately. Right? Because I'm creating sales, there was numbers, I'm generating revenue. So like the generation of revenue gave me a value in terms of a number, which allowed me to rank myself in terms of worth, it's interesting that you point that out, because as you even going into an entry-level position at a BD role, it's not always like the revenue that you're generating. You have to demonstrate your worth and your value in different ways. And safe to say that nothing's given to you, right? So none of these opportunities or connections or networks were given to you. You have to search them out. Can you talk about that, Martina? Like what really drove you to continue to build out your networks, and how did you get that going? Like, what made you successful to continue to move up the chain?
Well, I will say, I don't know how far I've moved up the chain per se. Like that's kind of an interesting analogy, only because I think that success looks really different for everybody, right? And so one thing that I, for a little while, was pretty stuck on was title. And the problem with that was that not not having a title that I thought gave me value, I devalued myself because of that. And that's not helpful. That's not useful, right? So I that's something that I've like more recently been able to relinquish and just be like, okay, but am I happy? Am I enjoying the work that I'm doing? Do I enjoy the people I work with? Do I enjoy the people I work for? You know, like all of those things, like is much more about quality for me than anything else. And that's something that's been good for me. Now I'm my own person, and some people are like really driven by title and kind of rank and whatever that looks like. And that's fine. If that makes you happy, that's great, you know. And I think that's for me what success is like enjoyment. It's like, are you enjoying your life? Because if you are not, like, that does not equate success, in my opinion.
You know, it really makes sense, the fact that that's how you are like driven, because it's really a circular loop that you just went through, right? Like you were talking about initially when you were even in the chiropractor and like choosing rowing and like choosing the classes and courses you were taking were really Martina driven. And then you had like this switch, you're like, wait a minute, but I actually need to make money because I have financial burdens that come into place. So Martina switched over to like money mode. I gotta make a living. I have to like take care of myself financially. And then once you reach a certain level of comfort or at least sustainability, like you were mentioning on the financial side, Martina went back to like who you really are, which is, am I happy? Am I making an impact? You know, and I love that perspective because it's true. Like I feel personally, and I'm gonna ask you, I feel personally in terms of like our culture and who we are in this society in terms of like the race or the gender that we are identified as, that plays a big role in that validation that I think that we need to a certain degree as we're starting out, of the title, like that we've made it, or validation of our parents of like their struggles to bring us to this point where we've achieved something. And most of the times it's tied to a title or a certain number monetarily, or, you know, a base amount that I need to make, that I have to make, or money that I have to represent, or a title that I achieve. What do you think about that? What do you think about like that as a young professional, right, coming through and listening to your experience? What would you say about that kind of conflict, you know, to the reflection of like the race that you are identified or seen as, perceived as well as the identity that you're kind of showcasing externally, no matter what you think internally, but there is a reflection externally?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, seriously, I'm like, that's like a thesis right there. But, you know, my experience coming into the corporate environment, especially starting that corporate journey in Seattle, Washington, was very interesting because unlike the Bay Area where there's just naturally a lot more diversity, Seattle is, the tech environment in Seattle is very heavily dominated by white folks. And the job that I took at Avalara at the time, especially because it had not moved the headquarters off of Bainbridge Island yet, making it more accessible to folks who live in Seattle, was a lot of mostly white people and a lot of young white men and women who grew up on Bainbridge Island with a lot of wealth. So that was very interesting for me coming in. I was like, I grew up in Oakland. Like, I did not grow up with this kind of wealth. I am like going through a bankruptcy right now. Like I was like really hurting financially. And so to contrast that with my colleagues who were oftentimes younger than me and already had like, you know, just had savings and financial advisors and things like that. I was just like, we have just a really different outlook on life and kind of, the hardship of what I felt like was the hardship of life, where I was like, I'm struggling. Like it was like about a year into Avalara until I finally was able to like make ends meet, really make ends meet. Like nobody knew that, but that's the reality. And yeah, I think, I don't know if I'm even answering your question, but it's just, but like that, I'm like, but that was my like lived experience, right? And that had nothing to do with what I look like. That really didn't have anything to do with what I look like or my ethnicity. I think there's parts of it that definitely have to do with my heritage. My mom was raised very, very poor. My dad was raised very, very poor. but my mom's white and my dad's Latino. And so it's like, I have a white skinned person and a brown skinned person in my family. And then here I am, a mix of both. But neither coming from money. And so for them to, never having like that backbone of a trust fund or a savings account, not having college paid for, things like that, it just digs you farther into the financial kind of hole, or can. But I feel, I'm very proud of myself for getting out of that financial hole. That's for sure. Something that I really feel like I figured that out for myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, thank goodness. And as far as representation is concerned, like definitely going into an environment where the leadership was all white and predominantly white men, it wasn't a surprise to me. I was like, that was kind of one of the reasons why I avoided corporate culture for so long, was because I was just like, I don't want to be like just working for wealthy white men. Like that's not what I want my my life to look like. That doesn't feel meaningful. And I was like, and I need to make money. So how do I do this? And so I learned, I definitely learned a lot about myself, more of in a reflective way, but just kind of all the ways that I stayed. I kept myself pretty quiet. I kept myself pretty safe, I think, in that role initially. I really was like not trying to rock the boat. I was just like, I need to make sure I keep this job. So like, I'm going to make sure that almost like I had opinions, but I definitely didn't voice them very much. And so that was something that I learned about myself when I reflect back, that I'm like, yeah, I stayed quiet. And that was like a safety thing. I was acting out of like a sense of fear and safety in a lot of ways in my first few years in the corporate environment. And I think that that's something that a lot of people who come into these environments with different, kind of marginalized experiences feel, is like, we have to just kind of make it. There's almost like a feeling like, if I rock the boat, like I'm just going to get ousted. I'm going to get fired. Like, it's really, that's really, and like to not have a safety net that's scary. And
it's a delicate balance.
It is. It's a very delicate balance. And I think what's happening now in corporate culture around like diversity and inclusion is so huge, because it does empower those of us who have felt marginalized, and experienced either direct or indirect, bias in our direction, which I certainly have. That is important, because it feels like there's like, that's almost the safety net. It's like, okay, we do have some protection here to use our voice, and our voices do matter, and our voices are being, we're actually being asked right now more than ever to share our stories, and to grow, our communities in our work environments, which is awesome.
Absolutely. And that just goes in line with what you were mentioning, how language is so critical to everything that happens. And, me and others that have read also some stats that are out there in terms of how the population itself in the United States, as an example, it's just continuously turning more and more brown. We're like, there's just more brown people or Latinos that are being represented, and that we're going to continue to be continue to grow to be more than the majority now. I think I read somewhere was like 2020 in 2050 or 2030, we would be about a third of the population, and we being Latinos, Hispanics, whatever people identify as. And then on top of that, I believe it was roughly 3 out of 10 businesses that are being started up right now are actually Latino, and the majority of those in general businesses are female, that are leading the way in terms of opening and starting businesses, like yourself that has a business for yourself. I wonder, where do you see our industry in terms of accounting and technology and startup kind of phase? Where do you see it heading towards, and how do you see yourself progressing, and where do you see yourself within this industry that continues to grow more brown?
Well, as it grows more brown, which is great. I love hearing that. And I will say, like, even as I think part of the excitement for me around that continued growth, is that in addition to the growth of diversity of brown folks in our our success, is also just that our peers and, are more and more becoming allies to that that success. And that's really beautiful to watch. And to watch, witness, experience, it's so important. So, I just want to kind of throw that out there, that it's not like just us, just our little pod or whatever. It's like, it's really everyone. It's really collectively, like everyone kind of growing in this acceptance, and mindset shifts and all of that, and breaking down those cultural biases, whether it's around race or gender or sexuality, sexual orientation, whatever the case may be. And as far as where do I see it? I mean, I'm even thinking about it as we look at our shifting political environment. It's really interesting to see, and I think what we're going to continue to see is young people, brown folks, all different heritages, entering leadership roles and leading, literally leading, either being the founders of companies, or moving into those CEO, COO roles, where that representation is starting from up here now, if we're going to look at a hierarchy, and rather than just being hired in to kind of fill a quota, because I have seen that happen, where it's diversity and inclusion efforts, there's low level, entry level positions that are getting filled, and it's look, we're diverse, but that's not diversity. That's still a hierarchy, and you still, so it's really leadership roles that have to be filled and will ultimately be filled by people who look like us.
Yeah, I always say it's I think that quota that you were mentioning, that kind of underlying I guess strategy that some companies have to take or decide to take, it's more like, we're giving you a seat at the table, right? Which is fine, and it was fine in a certain generation in the past, but I think what we are striving for, and I believe that the people that comprise in terms of a Contabi, is that we're looking to have our own table where we're making the decisions, or part of the decision-making process. I want to be able to decide for everyone, or have a vote in terms of what we're going to eat at this table and when we're going to serve it and how we're going to serve it and with what flair we're going to put it. And I think that's the transitional that you were mentioning that's going to happen. In addition to, even in our industry, the majority of the marketing and the materials that are out there are not people like us, the majority. And so I really feel, and I think we really feel, that this industry is going to change towards that, where we're going to have teams that are dedicated specifically for the Latino market, teams that are dedicated and have strategies in place to address the cultural market that is Latinidad, or whatever it's called, Latinx, Hispanic, whatever people are generalizing themselves for. And I think that's really interesting, because it's going to bring up so many more roles for individuals that really don't see themselves in tech because they're not programmers or engineers, but rather they're in psychology, that they're in different fields that are not traditional that they thought were, that are going to let us into this market. Even just using your example, you came with Raza studies, right? That was your focus, and it was to a certain degree even the physiological piece of it, which is the chiropractor, and that's what you were looking at. To be now in tech and in accounting, think about Martina at 19 years old, Martina, you're going to be in an accounting company focused on selling business services to all these.
I would have been no way. I mean, yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing about, this is always why I think it's interesting to reflect on younger years, because honestly, I didn't think I was going to make it. I mean, I just I think there's definitely some people who just know, and just have that fire in their belly around, living a big life, and and being kind of a star in some way, shape, or form. There's those personalities, and that wasn't my personality, though. My personality was much quieter, much shyer. I mean, I identified as a young person as a shy person. I do not identify as a shy person anymore, and I've broken through a lot of that shyness. I can public speak. I teach yoga, to lots of people all the time, and so I'm a completely different person than I was when I was 19, or any time in that first 20 years really. But I really like, I just, because of that, I couldn't even envision something for myself that I couldn't envision, or I could have, right? But I didn't envision the life I have now. And I feel like if I knew what I know now, and I could take those lessons back to little me, high school me especially, I think, yeah, I mean, I for sure would have gotten started on this path a lot sooner, but I honestly don't know that it would change a whole lot. Like I think that I'd still, just because of who I am, I like variety, and I like trying a lot of new things, and it just, so, you know, it just took me some time I wanted to test the waters in a lot of different places, and that's okay. And I think that that's something that, you know, the more we come to know ourselves, like, that's a really important area, is to just appreciate, like, what is your personal process? Like, are you the kind of person that needs to try everything? If so, awesome. Like, do that, keep doing that, because that's going to lead you to your, you know, your rainbow, or whatever it is, your success. And I'm thinking of leprechauns now. End of the rainbow, right? Your gold pot. And I think that's just like, it's like appreciating who you are as an individual, and really being clear about who you are, what your process is in life. And like you said, that can take time, that can take experience. It took me, a few decades to kind of see the pattern of my life and be like, that's who I am. Like, this is how I roll, you know? But now I can take that into how I work and how I collaborate. And I just know that about myself. I'm like, I need to have things organized in a certain way so that I can, so that I can track things. And I like and enjoy a variety of experiences. So I need to be in a role where I can do a lot of different things. And that's in part why having a yoga studio on the side is so valuable to me as well, because it's an area that I can lead. And, and it's like, it's small, but it's an area I can lead, and it's an area where I can show up and teach yoga and kind of have that persona. And then I can have this other work persona where I'm here and I'm doing, I'm doing work in tech and work in talking to accountants all the time. And, and eventually we'll meet people in person again at shows and things like that. But yeah, so I just appreciate, like, I think that that's something to also remember, or to reflect on, for anybody who's kind of in that stage of like trying to figure it out for themselves, like identifying who you are and what your personal life process is that's, I mean, it's been very valuable to me. I guess I'll say that.
No, that's awesome. I think that's something that I try to remind myself about, reflection, right? About how, thinking about that younger Joel that was out there, and what I can help and what I can continue to share that are things that are actionable that I could change. Like you mentioned, being able to find yourself take seriously. And some people don't ever get to do it. But there are some actionable things that we can do. And one of the biggest pieces that I heard from you right now was just like, be true to yourself and find things that you like and you enjoy and you're passionate about, because good things come from that. If you, obviously you left the acupuncturist or the chiropractor, what was it? Yeah. The chiropractor office, but you were doing it because you were interested in that field. So you started, you looked, or you sought a job in that area. And through that, other things came about and other doors opened for you. So I think being not fearful, which is what you were able to do, about just trying and finding yourself, or going through that journey of finding yourself, you do open doors. And eventually, I think it's good to know that doors open within all these different industries, which is great. Thank you, Martina. I mean, obviously getting to know a little bit more about you is awesome. And learning about some stellar leaders within the accounting, like vendor side and the accounting industry itself, are so important to reflect on, because I'm sure that there are other younger Martinas out there that are going to listen to your story and be like, yeah, that's totally how I feel. And sometimes you feel like in a rut, and it's okay to seek financial security. You're not a sellout. it's a must.
Yeah.
You have to go through it.
Yep. This is life lessons. Being a grown-up is hard, guys. It's not easy. Life lessons.
Are we grown-ups though? Really?
I mean, yeah, I never feel like I'm really grown up, but it's always interesting. Like, I'm doing a lot of grown-up things. I feel like I might be a grown-up.
Again, thank you so much, Martina, for taking the time and just letting us in Contabi Alliance getting to know you a lot better. And we really appreciate the work that you're doing and continuously moving the needle for others that are coming after you that are going to be able to then have positions like you have today at a shorter time because you've paved the way in so many areas. So appreciate it. And thank you so much for spending your time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Joel.